Hello, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our fight against the war on youth. Just a heads up, we are recording it just for for people to be able to access it later. My name is Nadia. I'm with Stop LAPD Spying, and today I'm really excited for our webinar. And just a quick, before we get started, just a couple of quick logistics. One is that, again, we are recording it so folks can access it later. In addition to that, we also, we do have, mics are open, nice. I was gonna double check about that. So we do have, so if you'd like to, we can, no, the chat, yeah, the chat is open, sorry. The chat is or comments, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll be keeping it. You're welcome to put the hand raise button and we'll go ahead and call on you. So I'll basically today, what we're going to be doing is
Hey folks, my name is Matthias. I use he, him pronouns with the Stop LBD Spine Coalition. I think our comrade Nadia just dropped off, but yeah, I want to thank everybody again for being here. This is our War on Youth webinar. It's the second Tuesday of every month. And I think Nadia went through the functions, what we've got going on. People can chat, people can raise their hands and unmute if we have any questions. But yeah, so today we're gonna be quickly giving updates on our fight, but we're also really honored to have, with us today, Harold Welton, former Black Panther, SNCC member, and just a legendary organizer. And so we're gonna get into conversation with him very briefly, or after a very brief set of updates. And so Harold, we're so grateful to have you, and we're gonna give you time to introduce yourself and let folks really take in just how lucky we are to have you here and talk about some of the work you've done. But before that, I think we very quickly want to give some updates on what we've been doing in the past couple months, where our fights are, and me, I believe you've got something to show folks.
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief. We'll go into it a little bit more, but we just wanted to provide folks with a little bit of update to some of the work that we've been doing here on for the fight against the war on youth. So if folks are following us on social media, we'll be showing little snippets about some of the youth organizing we've been doing recently with STEM to the Future, which is a summer freedom camp that continues to have programming. We did a lesson plans with youth from first grade to fifth grade, talking about abolition, creating our own youth organizing agenda, and then how we kind of culminated with videos. But we'll go ahead and look at those videos a little bit, or in the second part of the webinar, as well as some other youth organizing that we've continued to work with, continue to build with, and continue to kind of mobilize around, whether it's the grants that LAPD has, or ways of mobilizing and being able to incorporate popular education. But we'll go into it a little bit more on the second part, and I'll pass it back to Matios.
Cool, thank you so much, Nee. And so, yeah, I think first and foremost, we want to name that it's Black August. That is the theme for this month's webinar. And during Black August, we honor incarcerated freedom fighters. We honor, the autonomy, the liberation of Black bodies, and we honor the culture of resistance that's been passed on by our predecessors. And in that legacy of resistance, and in honoring that legacy of resistance, we look at how there are similarities to kind of the landscape of the fight today. And so with that framing in mind, I couldn't think of a better person to bring on than Harold Welton. And Harold, I'm just gonna let you take it away you wouldn't mind telling the folks about yourself, your relationship to Black August, some of the history of Black August. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you're muted there, Brother Harold. Harold, I'm so sorry. I think you're muted there.
Okay, hi everyone. My sound screen is freezing up on me. And thank you for inviting me to your organization Zoom call. Yes.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It is a bit choppy. I'm not sure if you can hear me. It may help to just turn off the video. Yeah, turn off the video on your Zoom app, and your audio should come through a little bit clearer.
What did you say?
It's coming through a little choppy on our end, so I think it may help if you just turn off the video on your end.
Okay, let's.
These are the.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're coming through clear now. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Okay, Black August backstory is January 13th, 1970, 3 Black prisoners were martyred in the infamous O-Wing of Soledad, which is solitary confinement. It was set up in the sense that white prisoners and Black prisoners were segregated. The guards allowed Black and white prisoners to come on the yard knowing that there would be a problem. And there was a Soledad guard by the name of O.G. Miller, a sharpshooter, if you will, or a dumb shooter, managed to kill 3 Black prisoners in a so-called altercation fight. Those prisoners were W.L. Nolan, Cleveland Edwards, and Alvin Miller. About a week later, the grand jury came back with a decision of no indictment on the murderous guard. A week later after that, there was a San Quentin guard that was found with a note on his uniform that said, "1 down, 2 to go." A week after that, the grand jury indicted 3 prisoners and Soledad prisoners by the name of John Cluchette, Fleeta Drumgo, and George Jackson. March of 1970, a movement grew out of what was called Free the Soledad Brothers. Angela Davis was prominent in that movement. That movement became not only national, but it was an international movement. Free the Soledad Brothers. It was also the beginning of what was called the modern day prison movement. People reflecting on political prisoners inside prisons and political prisoners that became prisoners from the work that they were doing on the outside. That movement grew tremendously fast. August 7th, Black August 7th, 1970, 17-year-old Jonathan P. Jackson went into a San Marin County courthouse where there were some prisoners on trial for an incident that happened at San Quentin where a guard was allegedly stabbed, right? Jonathan stood up after a while in the courtroom and told the judge, all right, gentlemen, I'm taking over now. And in the process, he gave guns to people that were in the courtroom who chose to arm themselves when Jonathan asked them, did they want to go with him? They also took hostages. In the process, there were reporters there who took pictures of this, what we call the San Marin County Courthouse Slave Rebellion. And revolutionaries said they proceeded out of the courthouse when they got in the van with a judge and there's one other person. And the San Quentin guards and the judge was killed, the DA was wounded, and two of the jurors was martyred. James McLean and William Christmas were martyred. Let me put a footnote on that. During Angela Davis's trial, she was later charged with that incident along with Rochelle McGee. During her trial in 1970, by the name of Sergeant Murphy. Sergeant Murphy the question was innocent people being killed and well, what if there was two judges, a woman, two or three women hostages, and a baby? Would it still be the policy to no escape clause? And the guard said yes. Then it got up to 5 judges. And the Sergeant Murphy was asked the question again, and was, so it is the policy of San Quentin to they're innocent or not, he's paraphrasing. So, Angela Davis was indicted about a month later for allegedly supplying the guns. She was indicted for conspiracy to murder, and aggravated kidnapping. Rochelle McGee was indicted on the same charges. There was a national and international movement that developed out of Angela Davis being a political prisoner. It was Free Angela Davis and all political prisoners. That movement went on until Angela was acquitted of all charges in late 1972. Rochelle McGee, not a lot of attention was directed to Rochelle. Rochelle was tried twice. There were hung juries on the first trial. the conspiracy to murder and murder, and the kidnapping charge. There was another trial where there was a hung jury, 11-1 for conviction on the aggravated kidnapping, but 11-1 for acquittal on the murder and conspiracy murder. What the judge and corrupt lawyers did, some of the lawyers were corrupt, was they pleaded Rochelle out to aggravated kidnapping on the belief that, hey, if they try this again, they might convict Rochelle on the conspiracy to murder and murder. So those charges were dropped, murder and conspiracy to murder. So Rochelle has been in prison for 59 years total. He's been a political prisoner since the August 7th rebellion. And I guess I'll get into that later, more detail on the Coalition to Free Rochelle McGee. But Black August consists of what we call flea days. First flea day is August 1st. August 1st is called the opening. The opening is, we have what's called Karamu, where we go to the ocean and recognize the ancestors that were shipped as slaves for 488 years to the so-called Americas and other places. The second day is August 7th, 1970, the August 7th rebellion. And then we have August 14th, or August 13th, I'm sorry, August 13th. In 1979, there was a prisoner by the name of Qatari Gulden, right? He was medically assassinated in Soledad, I believe, Soledad prison. So a movement grew out of that and was called the Black August Movement. Black August Movement is fasting, staying physically fit, and various other practices, but let me continue with the flea days. We also have August 21st. August 21st was the day that Field Marshal Comrade George Lester Jackson was assassinated. George, as most of you probably already know, was the most watched prisoner. We have to understand that George was always three guards, always escorting him to a visitation and back. Believe her name, her last name is Anderson. The first name for sure was Bonetta. Bonetta allegedly had exhausted her visits. So she allegedly gave Stephen Bingham a tape recorder that supposedly, and remember, we're talking about San Quentin, the most watched prisoner in the state of California at that time, allegedly handed Stephen Bingham a tape recorder that was supposed to be hollowed out with a 9mm, actual 9mm, which weighs about 3 pounds, right? And after the consultation with his lawyer, George and the three guards left the visitation room to go to what was called the so-called from that visiting room to the entrance of the so-called adjustment. And he allegedly had a 9mm hidden in his afro, his natural. He gets to the Sally Port, the entranceway to the adjustment center. And he supposedly said, okay, this is it, and starts shooting guards, right? After that, he allegedly with another prisoner by the name of Johnny Larry Spain, supposedly tried to scale or jump over a 14-foot wall at San Quentin. Etta Anderson, in the trial that occurred after the San Quentin martyrdom of Comrade George, you could imagine that the state was pushing hard to convict what was called the Soledad brothers again. They were going to trial, right? Fleeta Drumgo and John Plachette. The district attorney never called Vanetta Anderson. No one has, to my knowledge, no one has Vanetta Anderson since. I remember about 10 research that, and it was a dead end. So we have now
Harold, I'm so sorry. We're actually just having some trouble hearing you right now. I don't know if I'm coming through on your end. So I don't know if there's maybe a.
hello?
Hey, Harold. Yeah, no, we're just having trouble hearing you. I'm wondering if there's a spot where it might sound a little better there, or alternatively, maybe give you the call in.
You want me to call?
Yeah, that might be best. It might be easier, just so.
Ahmed, can I call you and talk through your phone?
Sure, I'll send you the call-in number right now, Harold, and the joining code. I'm texting it right now to you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're coming through right now. It's just sometimes there are long periods where it doesn't.
Slow the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, one of the hurdles we've had to navigate with COVID and Zoom. It's all good. In the meantime, I invite folks to type any questions they might have in the chat. And yeah, I don't know if we have those clips on already. Well, you can show a quick one.
Yeah, definitely. I'll share my screen shortly.
I didn't get the text yet. Apologize, Carl.
No worries at all.
Just sent it to you, Harold.
Okay.
Yeah, we might be okay now. Thank you for doing that, Hamid.
Let me see. No, I haven't gotten it yet. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly, which is
Okay, well, so we have the 4 fleet aids that I mentioned.
You're out again.
Huh?
We lost you again, Harold.
Did you receive the text, Harold?
Not yet.
Oh, I don't want to announce your phone number publicly, but I'm responding to the text that you and I exchanged.
Okay. Can I try to talk through your phone?
Sure. Absolutely, we can try. Or how about if we give you the number right now and the code? So if you want to write it down.
Is it okay?
You ready? I love this. I mean, like, at least we're doing this and we're talking about, I mean, the beauty of this, why it's, I mean, I'm so glad it's happening also, Harold, for us to remind that how people were communicating with folks, like you're talking about this 1960s and 70s, right? And a whole revolution was going on. And so I think we have to remind ourselves that it's not, you know, in our comfortable zones of these communications that the revolution is going to happen. Is hard. It's tough. We all have to get used to this. But so you ready to copy the phone number, Harold?
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
And so that meeting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that meeting.
We hear you great.
Yeah, that Harold, that meeting ID is oh, unless he's in.
In our meeting.
So you may want to push pound twice after the meeting ID, and then once because we should receive you on the phone, and then you can turn the computer off, your screen off.
Followed by pound.
Sure.
So the meeting ID is there too. Yes.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
Just hit pound.
In the meeting now, there are 19 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. You are muted. You can mute or unmute yourself by pressing *6. You have been added to the waiting room.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay, Harold, we can hear you if you can turn your screen, your computer off now, and leave on the computer.
Turn my screen off. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Harold. Turn off the computer.
What'd you say?
Well, actually, you might be good now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Harold, just turn your computer thing off. Just you can leave, hit leave, and then your phone will stay on.
Okay.
So this way you'll stay on the phone and the computer will be turned off. Otherwise, we're getting a double echo.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Okay, so where do you want me to start? Where did I leave out?
I think, you know, we were talking about some of the history of Black August, how like some of the aspects of it, in addition to Fleet Week, the fasting component and the study component.
Right. Okay, so yeah, we have the Fleet Days, which is August 1st, the opening, August 7th, slave revolt, August 21st, George Jackson, political prisoners in and outside of the prison. And then there's the closing, August 31st. Programs that Black August Los Angeles has are the openings, and then the August 7th D-Day. Then we have August 21st, political prisoners in and outside. We also have what's called the Black Martyrs Tour and sacrifices. We go to various sites by bus where people were martyred and where incidents of attacks of people involved in the movements, the struggle for
justice and liberation. Some of the sites we go to, Adams and Montclair, three Black Panther Party Southern California chapter members were martyred on Adams and Montclair. Black August 1968. Tommy Lewis, Steve Bartholomew, and Robert Lawrence. Then we go to First AME Church, where one of our members, Sandra Red Pratt, was found dead in 1971 in Linwood. Her services were at the church. No one has ever been, this was during the so-called split in the Black Panther Party. No one has ever been indicted or whatever behind the killing of Sandra Red Pratt, which was Geronimo Pratt's wife. Geronimo was an incarcerated political prisoner at that time, going to trial on what was called 40-person central. I don't like to say shootout. Firefight or SWAT, which was the first time they used SWAT in the history of this world. And they lost out. No Panthers died, and the Panthers eventually were acquitted of all major charges, except for having so-called illegal weapons. Had they not had automatics, they probably would have died like Jerry Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in Chicago. This attack occurred 4 days after Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. We go to the 41st Central Office, and then we go to the Alfred Bunchy Carter Free Clinic. Bunchy was the founder of the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, who was in a street tribe called the Slaughsons. And he went to prison in the 60s, and then he, like Malcolm and George and Eldridge Cleaver, he educated himself about liberation and revolution. He came out and he, through his connection with Eldridge Cleaver, organized the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party in late 1967, and officially February 1968, the Southern California chapter started organizing. Then we go to what was called the Symbionese Liberation Army, where LAPD, SWAT, May 17, 1974, martyred 6 members of the Symbionese Liberation Army. And then from there we go to 66 and Cooper, there's a middle school there called Edison. At that point, 3 members of Black Panther Party were driving down Hooper, and they were stopped by what was called Metro. Metro, the best way to describe them were the stormtroopers, or the SS of LAPD at that time, called Metro. Metro opened fire on them, and they fired back. All of them survived, and they went on trial, and eventually they were acquitted on the ground that they were defending themselves, essentially. Then we go to where the Watch Revolt started on 116th and Avalon. From there, we go to the memorial sites in Compton, where Bunchy Carter is buried, and right across from that cemetery was a comrade by the name of Melvin X. Williams. He was very prominent in the student movement in the late 60s, early 70s. He was founder of the East Los Angeles College Black Student Union, which I was a part of at that time. He was found martyred in June of 1970, and no one has ever been identified as the person that martyred him. And so Martyr's Tour this year is going to be on the 27th, and we're going to start gathering. I'll put I'll have to find it, but I'll put the information up about the tour. The tour going to be on the 27th of August, Black August. We're going to meet at 10 o'clock at the Chukwu's Justice Center. And we're asking that people take the instant test. We will have test kits there. And also we're asking people to wear the mask. Black August, LA also, through the years, we have participated in different organized events happening in Los Angeles. And a lot of members that are in the coalition to free Rochelle McGee came out of Black August, Los Angeles. So, if you can still hear me, I'm open for questions or...
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Harold. And I invite folks to ask questions. I'm getting a couple requests here. If you go back to the gun and the afro as a story you were telling. So I don't know if you want to backtrack there or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, the gun and the afro, let me give another backstory. When Comrade George was martyred, there was support in places that you never would expect. Aretha Franklin spoke out against George's assassination, and people in other entertainment industry spoke out. But okay, the gun and the afro. Again, Comrade George was shackled at the hands and feet with a 9mm, certainly appearing in his natural. I don't know if you've ever seen an actual 9mm, how bulky they are, but this man managed to walk out of that visiting room with a 9mm hidden in his natural, according to Warden Nelson, the gangster that ran San Quentin prison at that time. Well, they did a demonstration on one of the local radio stations up north. They used a model, and they had the person handcuffed at feet and hands, walking with the 9mm in his hair, with 3 people on two on each side, and one. The 9mm kept falling out of his hair, right? At that time, well, now, I don't think that the prison system really cared what kind of excuse that they would come up with, because even today, the prisons, as you probably already know, their union, prisoners' union, is probably the strongest union in California, and the prison systems, they're like you said, high desert prison. That's the life, the underblood, if you will, for lack of better words. That's like how families, cousins, brothers, they have some type of job working in the prisons. My grandson is working in the prison system, right? So with all of that said, at that time, I don't think that the governor nor the prison system really cared. You know, they wanted to eliminate this brilliant writer, brilliant organizer, a person who might have gotten out, and like Eldridge at the time, and like Malcolm, that type of organizing skills, that type of courageous foresight, bravery. I really believe that George Jackson was not going to get out of prison. alive.
Thank you for that, Brother Harold. I want to open it up.
Huh?
I'm so sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I hope I'm clear on that to everyone.
It's yeah, it definitely sounded a lot better than earlier. So we appreciate that. And I just want to open it up to questions if folks have any at the moment. And feel free to type them into the chat. I'm happy to say them out loud. Or if folks want to raise their hands or unmute, that's cool too.
It's the San Gabriel Valley's child. That not the Asian community is known for. It's always like this big ordeal, you know. It's kind of nice for it to build up.
And we've got a question here from Chella asking is, what is the movement missing for liberation?
I think that the struggle is continuing. The good part of social media is a lot of organizations are using social media to organize, and I think that's a positive thing with social media. Although I think at times people get caught up in the hype and think the movement is centered around them, but not a lot. But I always say, when we talk about the past, we're looking at the past, one, to learn from the mistakes of the parishioners of the struggle, revolution, liberation of that time. And, hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We can hear you. Someone just
Also, looking back to move forward. I think that this struggle is continuous. I look at 2020, George Floyd. It's reminiscent of 1967, when there were revolts, so-called riots, all across the country. Most of them initiated by the police terror, right? And you had revolts, so-called riots in Newark, Detroit, New York, San Francisco, all over the country, except for LA. That's another story about LA. And so a lot of formations came out of the rebellions of 1967. You had, of course, the Black Panther Party had just begun in late 1966, October 1966. And so the Panthers started growing. And the other organizations, SNCC became more radical, more revolutionary. You had people like, matter of fact, the face of the 1967 revolt, Jamil Alameen, A.Trap Brown, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmine. And to give you an example, my comrades and I, we grew up together. Those two people, they really spoke to the streets. They spoke to us, and we understood what they were about. In the very beginning, we wanted to be in the student national coordinator. So I think that the struggle continues. I think there's a lot of good organizations out there. The fact that your organization is out there, I think that the struggle is continuing. But for sure, learning from the mistakes of the past.
The right light to the right spot.
Hey, Pancake, just your phone keeps on unmuting and playing music. So would you mind keeping the phone on mute, Pancake? Thank you.
Harold, thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. And what I got from kind of what you were saying, and I invite folks to raise their hands or unmute and respond, was learning about mistakes from the past. And I'm so glad you brought up the organizing efforts that came about in the 60s and 70s. And, you know, a lot of the work we talk about, a lot of the programs we organize against within classrooms are these kind of behavioral surveillance campaigns or risk assessment campaigns that look for certain behaviors within Black, Muslim youth and kind of target that to, you know, push back against any political resistance among youth. And so I want to honor my comrade Salim from the Palestinian Youth Movement, who put me on to Damien Sojourner and this paper, Black Radicals Make for Bad Citizens, where Sojourner talks about, I'm going to share a screen real quickly here. But Sojourner talks about, I might be freezing over here. Can folks see this? Do people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and so where Sojourner talks about or frames disciplining of Black youth within Black schools, and I'm just going to read a quote here, as a reactionary strategy in response to Black movements for freedom. Discipline practices are best understood as attempts to make Black liberation irrational and Black subjugation its logical converse, commonsensical. And the way this kind of came about, or the way this kind of manifested itself, as Sojourner highlights here, is by LAPD being introduced to these schools as teachers. And this is in direct effort, like to push back against, you know, youth organizing back then that saw education as, as a prime, as central to Black communal organizing, as Sojourner puts it in these schools. So I guess, you know, we know that study is a big component of Black August. I was hoping you could maybe share, you know, your experiences organizing as a youth here in LA with these groups, and then B, how you saw education, schools fit into that.
Okay. Los Angeles police and police, okay. The police, the Los Angeles police and the sheriff department have historically been miniature examples of the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover's intelligence program. As most of you already know, LAPD had what was called criminal conspiracy squads. And the sheriff had the Special Enforcement Bureau. Well, organizing as a youth, as a member of the Black Panther Party, member of what we call the Jonathan Jackson Education Cadre. My brother, who's a member of Fremont Black Student Union. We came into conflict with criminal conspiracy squad, so-called squad. LA, you probably already, especially the Los Angeles police, since the 40s, maybe even before, have always focused on so-called intelligence operations, disrupting and destroying organizations. Well, I'll tell you some incidents. When we were organizing the Jonathan Jackson Educational Cadre and Galvin Garden projects, we were at the Angeles National Forest shooting range in 1972. So, the Special Enforcement Bureau stopped us, right? Yes, we had guns in the trunk legally, ammunition separated, and they stopped us, right? They knew us by name. Matter of fact, they knew our nicknames, right? And we were seasoned there. We knew not to say nothing to them, right? They were, as we used to say, dropping nicknames. They were mentioning different Panthers and other names. Well, we didn't say anything. So these police drove us around, with 5 of us, in the back seat of one sheriff car. They drove us around the Angeles National Forest Mountains for about an hour and a half. One pig in particular, he had a little switchblade blade in his gun. So, I can use this a certain way. Just talking stupid, right? Anyway, they charged us with robbery, and then they got us to the county jail and all kinds of asking us all kind of crazy questions we didn't answer. They eventually dropped the charge. When I was in SNCC, we had what was called the Black Reparations Movement, right? It was an indictment on, this is in '69, an indictment on white churches and Jewish synagogues that were involved in the slave trade. Well, out of Detroit, a movement was called for on May 11th, 1969, for members of the what we call the Black Manifesto, go into white churches and Jewish synagogues. Here in LA, there was 10 of them, maybe 11. We first tried to go into this brand new, I guess, multi-million-dollar Catholic church in Wilshire. We didn't know that they didn't have mass at a certain time. So we drove around LA, we found a church on 8th and Hope, went into the church. Funny now, but not then. Just imagine some black youth in a white church with the big natural, boots, green coats, and sunglasses. My brother and I and Ron Wilton, we walk up to the podium. And the other members were passing out the Black Manifesto, and Ron Wilton spoke at the church's Mother's Day. And we were standing on each side of him, hands crossed like we were guards, his bodyguards. And then our lookout post at LAPD was all in front of the church. When we walked out the church, they got us. And I was 18 at the time. So Ron, myself, and another woman, Sandra, we went to the adult jail. Evans went to the juvenile hall. When we get to the glass house, as we used to call it, LAPD's old headquarters, I forgot the street, Los Angeles Street or something. We got interrogated by 2 detectives that worked with criminal conspiracy. Well, Ron had already schooled us, again, don't say nothing to the police, right? Don't say nothing. So they were asking questions about, like, well, who's funding y'all? Are you getting your money from, they had the PLO, right? The Palestinian Liberation Organization, which we related to, and we dubbed the PLO, right? And I didn't ask them, what is your nickname? I tripped at the time. I did tell them clowns my nickname. From that point out, they would, when we're in the JJC and particularly Donovan Jackson Educational Cafe, hope I'm not battling y'all. But it was like be riding around late at night on their little bullhorn. Buffy, that's my nickname. Get up and come out of your house, right? And then we were charged by LAPD, by the way, felony conspiracy to disrupt the religious service. But the minister of the church, who had a connection with USC, in fact, bailed us out, right? Like I said, they dropped the charge. The criminal conspiracy squad, who later developed into the public disorder division. I don't know what they're called now. They still live. And so, yeah, our experiences with them was that they're ruthless, there's no such thing as, well, they need more training. The training to kill and put people in prison. Better. So I hope I didn't ramble. I hope I answered your question. But LSPD in particular, they're notorious. They are notorious with their spy agencies. Notorious.
Yeah, it's such a trip to, thank you so much for that, Harold. It's such a trip to hear you describe all that and just to think of the parallels. Hamid typed in the chat that PDID became the anti-terrorism intelligence section.
Right.
And just thinking about how much of this youth surveillance that we see today that's directed at Muslim Black youth is oriented around this kind of extremism talk, and really does stem from the same counterterrorism narrative that is definitely a descendant of the PDID division. And so I know you talked about it, and folks, please, does anybody have any questions? Let me just open it up, see if anybody wants to unmute and ask anything. And then, so Mamta has a question here, and she's asking if you could comment on the role of internationalism, Black internationalism, and its role in the radical Black tradition historically and in the current moment.
Okay, internationalism was always, I always speak of my comrades that I grew up with in the Vanguard process. We got out of what we called the white devil stage at a very young age. I think we were like, I was 15, 16 years old. We got away from that. We started reading books about Cuba, liberation struggle in Africa, Milcar Cabral, Che, the PLO. We related to those organizations. We related to the struggle of the Palestinian people in occupied Palestine. We dug them. I remember being in high school during the so-called, what was it, the 6-Day War, 1967. And I remember we organized a demonstration opposing the so-called 6-Day War. I remember not all, but some Jewish teachers, they weren't feeling us, right? Because of our support and speaking out in the cause of the Palestinians. We related to the Palestinians. We related to the fact that they recognized the struggle here of people in color, Black people. They talk about our struggle. So we would wear Palestinian colors at a very young age, right? And then the struggles in Africa, like the Milcar Cabral. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Milcar Cabral. He was a revolutionary that was martyred. He was General Secretary of the Revolutionary Struggle in Guinea-Bissau. His internationalism, he spoke at the, I think it was called the International in Cuba. I want to say around 1968, maybe. And we read about that. And, you know, here's a man that's from Africa speaking in Cuba. They were revolutionaries from all over the world in Cuba, right? Maybe somebody can look it up and correct me on the exact year and date. But we related to that. The Vietnamese liberation struggle, individuals from that revolution were there. Ho Chi Minh, we related to the fact that when he came to America, his recognition of the Black liberation struggle in the United States, Von Nguyen Giap, as my Vietnamese comrade said, the correct name is Giap. We dug him. We dug him in terms of the way he organized his forces in Vietnam to deal with the imperialist occupation of their land. So footnote on Cuba, love the Cubans. Some people have problems with Fidel and others, but I don't. The Cubans between 1960s and late 80s, Cubans sent doctors, they sent educators to Africa. In addition, Angola, revolutionary country, was attacked by the then all-white South African army in the late 70s and 80s, I believe. And each time, Fidel sent troops to Angola to assist the liberation struggle in Angola. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Cubans lost over 10,000 soldiers in Angola, in the soil of Africa. They did not ask for some capitalist payoff. He did not ask for anything other than solidarity from the Angolan people. And then the struggles in Colombia, the struggles in Argentina, the struggles in the Caribbean, the struggles, the IRA and Northern Ireland, we related to those struggles. And we'll footnote on that. SNCC dissolved, for lack of better words, dissolved in summer of 1969 because SNCC in 1968 and 67 took out a strong pro-Palestinian stance against Zionists. And that the money that existed during the civil rights part of student nonviolent coordinated committee, later the student national coordinated committee, money dried up because of the stand that they took. And so we're internationalists. We're not into that, what I call goofy nationalism. Goofy YouTube professor nationalism. We were not just talking internationalism, but we were doing that. And George Jackson, in the confines of a 24-hour lockup being in the hole, George Jackson had a strong internationalist outlook in his organizing on the inside of the prisons in his two books that he wrote, Blood from My Eyes and Solar Letter. So I would say this one final thing. I don't recognize this country as the United States or America. This is an occupied, like Palestine and a lot of other countries. This is an occupied country to me. Existentially, it's occupied. And nobody invites Western Europe over here. Nobody told them to come over here. I'm sorry for going on. Anybody tell them to come over here and make yourself at home, have coffee and this and that. Western Europe in particular, Western Europe came over here with their kingdoms and later their financial structure. They came over here to build Europe, and they took land from the indigenous people, all of these lands from the tip of South America all the way up to Alaska, Canada. Took the land from the people and then started calling it places like America, South America, Central America, so internationalism, solidarity.
Thank you for that, Harold. And I don't think you need to apologize at all. We're literally here to hear you speak, and so we're so grateful that you shared this much. And Mamta, who asked that question, threw a fist up midway, and we got a couple hearts on the screen. So people are feeling a lot of love in regards to what you just said. And we've got a couple more questions if you got the time. But yeah, I saw a question from Elliot up there, which I'm gonna get to in just a second. But Nadia just asked, I know we talked about how Black organizing was kind of targeted back then within schools and how the police were actually present. Nadia is asking how, if you could talk about the role of teachers and what roles they had in maybe criminalizing organizing or maybe supporting it back then among youth. Yeah.
As far as teachers, I can talk about Fremont High. There was a protested boycott there from 68 to 69. Matter of fact, that's my second documentary. We're almost finished on that struggle at Fremont High. And we had support from the teachers. That's what you asked. We had support from the teachers. The teachers were speaking out, and the teachers supported the struggle of the youth, of the Black Student Union. You also had brown students involved in that movement. And we, maybe because we were focused on being around older comrades, we tended to pull, I shouldn't say older, big brothers and sisters, because we related to their experience and organized. So Fremont was a great example. We had teachers speaking out in support of that struggle at Fremont High School for a better education, better reading program. I wasn't involved in that struggle. My brother was. He was 3 years younger than me. But he was very sophisticated. Let me give you another example of criminal conspiracy, LAPD. In 1969, my brother and 3 of his comrades, they all grew up together. They were secretly indicted, and it's in the documentary. The documentary is called Liberation of Fremont High School. They were secretly indicted by the district attorney's office, and they were charged with conspiracy. Anytime they put the conspiracy on you, it's a felony, right? Conspiracy to disrupt the education code. And they went through the court system for about a year fighting these cases. They were teenagers, they're kids, right? My brother was 15 years old. And eventually they had lawyers who happened to be in the Communist Party. We didn't care. The name communism didn't bother us. We didn't fear that word back then. Oh, they're communists. So we had they had 2 lawyers. I think one of them's name was Buhai. I can't think of the other one's name. They were women, right? And they defended my brother and his comrades, and got them off. He's juvenile, you know. So we had the walkouts, the East Los Angeles walkouts, teacher involvement in the walkouts in '68, mass walkouts from several high schools in LA. I'm trying to think of the comrade's name, that Sal Castro. Sal Castro was the face of that movement. So it was a strong student movement. And you had Black student unions on the colleges. We worked along with an organization on the campus of East Los Angeles College called La Villa Nueva. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And I wasn't there because I was in SNCC. This was right before I came to the college in October 1969, LA College, not for an education, because I wanted to be in Black Student Union with a comrade named Melvin X, who I was told right after Smith. And they organized in early 1969, Black and brown students, they organized and had one of the largest walkouts, college walkouts at that time. And they were successful in getting Black and brown studies program and Black and brown newspaper. Brown newspaper is called A Vida Nueva, and the Black newspaper is called the Vanguard. So yeah, I remember some of the comrades at the college. We were young, but I remember doing what was called one of the largest mass walkout of colleges across the country. This was when 3 students were killed by the National Guard in Ohio at Kent State. And there were walkouts all over the country. In fact, they closed the schools, right, for several days, colleges, because of that. Well, during that time, we had been organizing to disarm the police at East LA College because it had the largest police science department in the state of California. In October, when I got there, September, that's what I meant, they're struggling to get these students who were police officers taking classes, they were armed. Well, May 11th again, something about May 11th. We organized on the massive strike for Kent State, based on the fact that Richard Nixon had expanded the imperialist war in Vietnam into Cambodia and Laos, right? So we decided that we were going to march around the police science department building. And we marched around the building. Somebody gave, wasn't me, gave the word, let's go in the room. And in retrospect, I'm looking at it as a tactical mistake. Mind you, we should have really realized that, man, these police are armed and we're not. When I walked in the room, about 8 or 9 of us got in the room, and this police officer, his name is Sergeant Stevens. He worked at the East LA Sheriff Station. He was a teacher. He opened his briefcase, pulled out his gun, put it on the desk, and I saw that, and I told everybody in the room that they slammed the doors on us, right? So everybody used to say, be cool, because man just pulled out a gun. So then Sergeant Stevens, I can't remember his first name, said, all right, all those who are police officers stay in the room. All those who are not, please leave. So they let them out the back way, right? And they said, okay, now all those that are police officers, remove these students. So we got in a fight with them. They won. They won. And so anyway, they moved us out of the room. So we had a rally in the student lounge at East LA College, and I spoke about what happened in the room, right? And I think it was about a week later, I was still with my mother, living with my mother in the process. And my mother told me that the police were at the door. What did you do? I said, Mama, God bless my mother. Mama, tell them I'm not here. We had these little attics in the projects that I don't think they knew about. So I hid in the attic. And they came in the house, we looked around, couldn't find me. So my mother was like, don't go to school, don't go to school. Anyway, God bless my mother, rest in peace. That's the first thing I did was go to school. and I was arrested as soon as I hit the student lounge. I had 5 charges. Believe it or not, back then, if you gave speech and you use profanity, if somebody complained, like a woman or a child was there, that was 316 point whatever. So I had 2 using obscenity in a public place, 2 disturbing the peace, and 1 assault on a police officer. Luckily, they were misdemeanor charges. We had what was called E75, and we went to trial in October 70, October 70. And me and another comrade it was 5 of us now, me and a comrade were convicted. And he got probation and I got county time and probation. So yeah, the student movement, the instructors, the teachers that we had, a lot of them took stands. They stood shoulder to shoulder with us. And yeah.
Thank you for that, Harold. That's all such a trip, but the obscenity laws, I think, threw me for a loop more than anything.
Yeah. Tell me to stop it going on too long, comrade.
No. Yeah, no, not at all. If anything, we've got one more question for you, if you have the time. And I know we want to talk about the Coalition of Free Rochelle McGee, but we have one more question for Elliot, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question is, I'm so sorry to find it. Elliot says, "I'm a 60-year-old white man with Eastern European ancestors. What is my part in this?" And I think this is the revolution, this work, I suppose.
I think your part in the revolution is to carry on the revolution, to educate, agitate, organize. Again, I don't really like capitalism. Capitalism doesn't recognize anything but profit. You see? You look at the examples of Chairman Fred Hampton. Chairman Fred Hampton organized former right-wing, I don't want to say Nazis, but Confederate-type Chicago white people. And he was effective in organizing different, not just people of color, but white organizations. That's why he had so much support. At Fremont High, my brother and his comrades had a lot of white support, you see? And Fidel is white, he was white. Jay is Irish and indigenous, right? And I love him. Now, Fidel, I don't know if folks know this, but Fidel's father, who was a sugar plantation owner, he had 2 sets of families, right? The rich set and the not so rich set. Fidel's brother and sister were the not so rich, if you will. Well, Fidel and his brother Raul, they worked on sugar plantations with black workers. And I think that's where Fidel picked up his commitment to not just brown and other people of color, but his involvement in African countries, people were African in the diaspora, was very, very strong. If you have a chance, comrade, all of the comrades, there's a documentary called Cuba and the African Odyssey. It's long, but it's a good documentary. It talks about Cuba's struggle from the beginning, expelling the Spanish, etc. And the struggle all the way up to, I think the documentary was done in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it shows the solidarity of white comrades, Think about people that were involved in liberating Sada Shakur to Cuba. I don't know if you've heard of Marilyn Buck. I don't think Sada had too much problems with Marilyn Buck, who was white. Seeing her coming to liberate her from prison, I don't think he said, well, wait, that's a white woman. I got a problem with that. You see, so yeah, the Black Panther Party was always uniting with people of color and white struggles, right? In the beginning, the Black Panther Party had an alliance with Peace and Freedom Party, which for the most part was white. And the Black Panther Party in Los Angeles, Southern California chapter, Bunchy Carter, Alfred Bunchy Carter, in 1968, he reached out to the Brown Berets at that time and said, we want to unite. We want to have an alliance. And they did. So, as I said in the beginning, I went through that white devil stage when I was like maybe 14. As I was listening to Muslims who grew up in the Nation of Islam, who some of them grew up in projects, so I was listening to that. But after a while, reading books by Fidel, reading Marx, Lenin, reading revolutionaries from all over the world, I've always had an internationalist outlook. For the most part, I've always had an internationalist outlook on what must happen, what must be done. We need more friends than we need enemies.
Appreciate that, Brother Harold. Thank you so much for answering all these questions, for being so generous with your time.
You will.
Any more questions at the moment? So I'd love to talk about the Coalition to Free Rochelle McGee, or any calls to action you have for us.
Okay, the Coalition to Free Rochelle McGee began in late 2019, August 2019, to free Rochelle McGee. Rochelle McGee, again, was part of the August 7th slave revolt. And he's, as they say, the sole survivor of that. Rochelle McGee went to trial twice, and like I said earlier, he was bamboozled into accepting a plea that he did not want to accept. And so at this time, Rochelle is in his 59th year. He's 83 years old as of March 17th. He's on a walker. And we have done a number of things in our organization. And one of the things that we've done is we created a .org petition to free Rochelle McGee, which has this point over 33,000 signatures. I would like to have 33 million. We also have over 2,700 petitions going directly to the governor's office. We have template letters for folks can write their own letters and get a website. Can write their own letters to the governor, but it's all on our website. Our website is Free Rochelle McGee, Rochelle, R-U-C-H-E-L-L-E McGee, MAGEE. In addition, we want people to call the governor as much as possible, spread the word. The governor, we say contact Governor Newsom today. I sent you an email, and it has a number called 916-445-2841. You go through the prompts. Wait a minute, hold on. Let me computer went. Hold on. Okay, so you had press the 1 for English or 2 for Spanish. Press 6 to speak with a representative, and wait for someone to answer. We would like people to talk to a person. It doesn't take over 3 minutes. The phones are open in the governor's office Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Call Governor Newsom's office. Here is the script. Hello, my name is Harold Welton. I'm calling to encourage Governor Gavin Newsom to commute the sentence of prisoner Ruchell McGee, A92051, number T115, who has served 59 years in prison. Ruchell is 83 years old, so as an elderly person, he faces health risks every day from still being incarcerated for so long. In the interest of justice, key word right there, I'm joining the global call for Ruchell's release due to the length of his confinement, and I urge Governor Newsom to take immediate action to commute Ruchell McGee's sentence. These are some of the things that we have done since August 2019. We met with the governor's staff once, their legal staff, and we talked about various issues that Ruchell is facing, his time, his condition, his age, the fact that he's on a walker. So they did something that is a challenge for us, and they asked us to get his, and we're trying our best to get his C-file, which is his conduct in prison. Now check that out. The man's 83 years old, and then also we want to know if he's a threat. We didn't go through any arguments with the governor's staff. We always say that Michelle was doing the time. We're not doing the time. But we said, okay, just imagine an 83-year-old man on Walker. He's basically, not basically, he's there for political reasons. Number one being that a judge was killed, right? Not by Michelle, but by the San Quentin guards and the Lynn sheriffs, right? And then we met with DA Newsom's legal staff twice last year, and once, I think that was like in April of this year. And with the governor, with the district attorney going through the recall of which he lost, they have not given us any statement since about April concerning Ruchell's case, and we believe that is because of this recall that he lost. And we're not in the business of trying to intimidate man that could possibly get him out. And we're also conducting research with comrades up north, trying to get the Santa Clara district attorney, who is supposedly progressive, to see if we can get a case brought into the Santa Clara County his hands. That's where Rochelle was convicted in San Jose. So we found a lot of things. We found some stuff this week where one of them was that this guard, Sergeant Murphy, was talking about the non-value of hostages, and the other one was, I'm on this old newspaper site, and I found out that I had heard of this when I was young, was during the revolt of August 7, 1970. Rochelle was like the calming influence, if you will. Some of the individuals wanted to take a married couple and a baby hostage. But Rochelle said, no, let's don't do that. Let's don't take the baby hostage. And we're trying to put that package together to show here's a man, again, who has been demonized, who was concerned about this married couple and his child. Undoubtedly, from the way the sergeant at San Quentin was talking, women and children didn't matter. So, the website again is Rochelle McGee, FreeRochelleMcGee.org, FreeRochelleMcGee.org. Please call with Governor. Please sign the different petitions that you will see. And let's get him out. Tulu Shakur, who's political prisoner, he's really on his deathbed. He has uncurable cancer. And they won't let him out on compassionate release. Again, Michelle, he only has a kidnap. He doesn't have a murder. We did research on release rate for people convicted of murder in the state of California. And the average length of time is 40 years. And I'm not minimizing murder, by the way. But the average length of time is 40 years. So here we have a man that's been in prison for 59 years. Going on 60.
We appreciate that, Brother Harold. And we put the website up here too, so folks can click on it. And Tiff, thank you so much for putting you to call the governor's office. No, we appreciate you. And then again, thank you so much for being here. The last thing we wanted to ask is, we know, you screened a movie at Chuco's this past weekend, Jackson, Not Just a Name. We were wondering if there was anywhere we could see that, anywhere we can maybe see it in the near future. We'd love to plug folks into that fight, or into that, into viewing that.
Okay, now I just got an email from the Black August Festival, and it's supposed to be in their festival, but they want me to download the documentary to them, and I don't want to do that. I told them that I would rather, like we did at Chuco Justice Center, bring a hard drive in and screen it that way. So we'll see. I'll keep Ahmed, and I'll let him know if it's going to be in the festival, which is supposed to be on the 13th, so it's coming up fast. I don't know, but anytime we screen it, I'll let Ahmed know, and we'll get the information to you.
That sounds great. I know I want to see it. I'm sure that's the case for most of the folks on this call. Yeah, that's all we've got. Thank you so much, Harold. We really, really, really appreciate you, your time, the work that you're doing, your inspiration.
Yeah, it lets me know that the struggle continues. These young people, when I see young people out there organized, the struggle continues. I was going to also say real quick, you can find the trailer for Jackson, Not Just a Name. It's about 2 minutes on YouTube. And then the new documentary, The Liberation of Fremont High School, So it's called The Liberation of Fremont High and High School. It's on YouTube as well, a trailer. Not out yet, but we should be finished by September.
Excellent. I'll try to find those links and drop them in the chat here too. But we'd love to have you. Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brother Harold. We'll be in touch soon. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all, all of you. Thank you.
Folks, I know we've only got a few minutes left, but yeah, I'd love it if you could maybe share just some of the work we've been doing.
What'd you say?
Oh, I was just talking to my comrade Nee over here, asking them to share some of these photos.
Okay. If you can, try to make that Mortis tour. You're gonna like it.
Yes, and that's August 27th at 10 a.m. at Chuco's. I'll write those details in the chat as well.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for reminding me.
Okay. Comrades, that's it, right?
Yes, we appreciate you, Harold. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Long live the fighting spirit of George and Jonathan P. Jackson. All of them are everywhere, all over the world. All right. Take care, comrades.
Always, always, always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Always. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We'll talk. All right. Bye.
We done? No.
We're almost there. We just wanted to provide folks with some of just to provide some context as well about some of the youth organizing and some ways that we've continue to build with youth on campaigns, as well as to be able to kind of skill share as well. And so we just wanted to share some examples just in the spirit of Black August and in the spirit of rebellion, about ways in which we can continue to kind of agitate, continue to pass on those lessons, continue to build that with youth around us, with folks. I know that there's some teachers here as well, about ways that we can continue to agitate and to provide those lessons, regardless of like having to get this information or wait until you're able to pay for a lot of this knowledge that should really be accessible to all youth. So I'm just going to share real quick just some ways that the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition has worked with youth in the past. And so I'm just sharing screen right now for the Youth Stalker State, and it was a spin off of the Stalker State and the mapping out of all the different collaborators and the ways in which the state is stalking and tracking and tracing folks in community. And so this came out of a youth workshop where they were able to map out the ways in which the Stalker State targets specifically youth. And it was really dope to see just the different ways that folks were able to name folks. So some of the things as well that like were mentioned as well earlier about different folks that are either deputized in communities, or the ways in which certain things like counselors or sometimes teachers or administrators as well, how they police youth and how they track folks, whether or not it's through youth being deemed as on a pathway to extremism, or potential terrorism. And so we just wanted to share some of those examples about how we've kind of built that workshop on the Stalker State with youth. And it's y'all ain't slick Stalker State. So that's the acronym for the Youth Stalker State. And then other ways that we've kind of have been doing that as well with youth is building with the Roosevelt High School students, after a few workshops where we were looking at Operation Laser and the ways in which like hotspot policing, so identifying certain areas in the neighborhood as high crime, and then justifying the influx of police presence. We did these stencils with the Roosevelt High School students about a few months ago, And so we kind of were identifying through the mission sheets what locations were identified in the neighborhoods that the Roosevelt High School students live in and go to school in. And so one of that included Roosevelt High School itself, as well as Hollenbach Park in Boyle Heights. But these were some of the stencils that we created with youth. And then if we have time, I just want to share this really quick video of our STEM to the Future, a video that the youth that we were working with a few weeks back, they ended up after about a week and a half about lesson plans and looking at the police state and the history of policing, how they organized their own campaign for youth organizing, or kind of they identified what issue they saw and what it was that they were trying to abolish. And so I'm just going to share a small little clip of that, but you can also see the video on our social media if folks would want some youth medicine. And let me know if folks can hear the sound.
I'm Sean. Hi, I'm Alyssa. Hi, I'm Brian. We're here to abolish states using cameras. Spread awareness. Spread awareness. How does the community use cameras? To make memories and to be safe. And how does the state use cameras? To be racist and to criminalize people. It's also a waste of money. Abolish the state using cameras!
Cool, and I hope folks could hear that okay. Good, I'm getting some thumbs up. But yeah, those are some of the youth. One of the groups did the abolition of surveillance cameras. There's also a few other gems here on our timeline, including when we're talking about what the surveillance looked like. It included as well on the first day creating a timeline where we were able to track and see from the start of from like the Big Bang to more recent examples. So when the U.S. was created, when police departments were created, and when borders were created as well, we created this 30-foot timeline. And so for youth to be able to see how policing and borders are relatively new, it definitely does help in being able to be able to learn and know that like there are different alternatives that we can create, and that just because this is something that we're kind of used to doesn't mean that we should accept it and that we shouldn't question it. So yeah, those are just some of the examples of ways that we've organized with youth, that we've continued to like skill share and to develop that. But yeah, if folks have any thoughts as well about that collaboration, what that looks like, please feel free to either unmute yourself or to put it on the chat. But definitely did want to also just share other ways that youth have been engaged. And I'm not sure if Hamid or if anyone else would want to speak about other ways that the coalition has continued to build with youth from our inception to maybe more recent.
Is Nadia still on the thing?
I believe so. Nadia, let us know if you can unmute or if you want to share a little bit about it.
Still
Nadia, I
muted.
think you're muted.
Yeah, I guess. Well, Hamid, if you want to talk about some of the history.
No, I think Nina really covered it well. I think it's also why the name War on Youth. We're going back about 6-7 years as the coalition really was building. It's reaching out, youth outreach, and and some of the Nadia and Celine, and I think it was really critical that just how we are looking at the history of gang databases, the history of gang injunctions. This was also when the FBI had come up with this Black identity extremist designation as well. And then how the whole language around gangs was being used, very, very cleverly, and in a way that immediately would just criminalize young people. So that's been the fight, and we've seen that how Nina, as you were sharing the laser zones and all, that even high schools are targeted and they're considered as crime triggers. So youth are a target number one. And I would really love to emphasize, that social media and social network analysis and social media monitoring is being weaponized tremendously by the state to go after young people. And now they're forced to give their social media handles as well whenever there's an interaction with the cops. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Hamid. And thank you, Nee, for showing all that. And I think it needs to be said that video that we saw was directed and written by those youth. So that there's all the money throwing, it was their idea. And it was a delight to, to kind of be there to witness that happen organically. So a lot of this organizing we've been doing, this work within schools, has been partially in response to the fact that the LAPD has gotten this federal grant and they're expanding their surveillance efforts within LAUSD schools. So if you're an educator, if you know any educators, we're always available to do this kind of workshop stuff or to talk about this in any capacity. So if that's something you're interested in, you can shoot us an email at stoplapdspying@gmail.com. And I also wanted to invite folks, as we close things out, to our work group meeting next week at 6 o'clock. And there's a Zoom link for that, so you can shoot us an email if you're interested in plugging in. And in that meeting, we go over records requests we've gotten and kind of organize and work on popular education materials and whatnot. So it's a really great, fun space. You don't need to be an educator or have a background. This is all community-driven research, so everybody brings their own lens, and we kind of welcome, embrace that. And so, yeah, and lastly, I just want to open it up to any other announcements, questions in the group, anything like that. Thanks so much for plugging in today, friends.
Just two quick announcements. So just putting up on the screen our agenda or our hub for our weekly webinars, our weekly community meetings. So every Tuesday, or the first 4 Tuesdays, depending on the month, we have our weekly webinars at 6 p.m. This week was our fight against the war on youth, but our upcoming is our general meeting, and that's next Tuesday at 6 p.m. But if folks are interested or would want to get plugged in, you can also, if you go to, and I'll drop it on the chat, but if you go to stoplapdspying.org, I don't know how to say this, but this sign and then meetings, you'll see an angry cat, and then you scroll down and then you'll get to the calendar, and then you can either look at it as a list, or if you want the month, you can also get access to the links and just stay informed about different meetings we have, or just plug into some workshops that we may be hosting.
Monto wants to see the cat again. It's on the website and it's angry about surveillance. That's all we've got, folks. Thank you so much. We'll see you all real soon. Elliot, we're grateful for you. Yeah, take care.
Can I just quickly suggest that if folks have any suggestions for anything for us to, any topic of discussion or things like that, please send us suggestions by email. We'd love to, just make this as a collective effort too. So thank you.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.